it's so much talk about how much more skilled the European players are coming out and ready to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is true in some aspect. And I think my good friend Brian Scalabrine brought this up, and I thought it was a key point. When we talk about European development and you're out there scouting kids and you're watching,
mm-hmm.
he made a great point that we're always identifying the European big as being the model in which American players, American bigs need to emulate. But if their development system is so good, how come the guards over there are not coming over here playing and dominating? It seemed, and Brian brought this up, which was a great point, that as much as we want to talk about the European brand of basketball and grooming and growing, that's great for big men. But when it comes to guards, the Americans still dominate that conversation because the European guards haven't been able to come over to America and have that same impact as the European big. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to try to make this as short as possible because that's a big question. Okay, so first, when you look at the game, you have FIBA rules, which is a totally different game than, let's say, the NCAA rules, which is a different game than high school rules, which is a different game from AAU, which is a different game from the NBA. Okay, let's establish this right now. I go all around the world watching basketball. The only place in the world the NBA game is taught is in the NBA. Think about that. Can we just think about that right there? The only place in the world that the NBA game is taught is in the NBA. This is the only place. So now we're looking for transferable skills that will transfer to the game that's only played here. It's much easier for a big to transfer and play in the NBA than it is for a guard, because a guard has to manage the game. You won't see the speed and quickness in Europe that you see here. Okay. Now, what does this mean? Let's take the Olympics. How come Serbia, for instance, France, for instance, how can they play against our all-star caliber players that we send over there? How can they play in a very competitive game in the Olympics? Because of the rules. The rules are different. The game is different. The way you coach the game is different. So it takes away certain aspects that we're accustomed to talking about. So when you talk about basketball, you have to take into account the rules, the structure of the game. Now, the most important thing now, which in my opinion now, this is my opinion, what has happened is the coaching over there is better than the coaching that's over here now.
Why?
Because they have a system of coaching. You have to be certified to coach.
You're talking about on the lower level, even if it's the professional side of it, you gotta have
there's a
certifications and qualifications. Okay.
Yeah, you just can't be a EuroLeague coach.
Okay.
You can't just be a Euro Cup coach. You can't just coach because you like basketball. There is a certification process. Their coaches coach like we used to coach in the 80s and the 90s because that's where they all learned it. 92 was an important event that happened in the 92 Olympics because for the first time, the rest of the world had a chance to see our very best players in person and learn and study. So when you look at Jokic, when you look at Luka Doncic, when you look at these players, now they had a vision to see what our best look like live, not on tape. They only saw Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, these guys on tape. Well, in 92, they saw them live. They knew they were seeing the best. Then you started seeing all of the coaches go over there and started coaching their coaches. Now, when you watch EuroLeague, they play more physical than we do now because their coaching, they were influenced by all of those coaches in the 80s and the 90s. It's no wonder that today's players, right? Because I've been watching this now for 30, 35 years. There's no wonder that these players are better. Why? Because they play like all of the people that you see right here. They're emulating those players. That's the difference. Now we have a different way of playing. You don't see them playing pace and space over there. When you go over there, you're not driving to the basket and getting a layup. No, they're playing like we used to play. They're playing a game. You don't come down and just shoot a three there. No, you come down and you make your passes. You're setting screens. You're doing cuts. You're running sets. Now, they play what we call advantage basketball. You have a 3-on-2. Okay, you can play. 2-on-1, you can play. 4 against 3, you can play. If not, we're going to run something. They're very responsible. And if you look at their best players that are coming over here now, it's one element that they have with all of their players. They can pass the ball, regardless of position.
Check out new episodes of The Jim Jackson Show every Thursday. Watch on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page. Follow the show on Instagram @Jim Jackson Show, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.